It's the audacity of it all. And actually, which is going to be the theme of my next book.
The
And so just
audacity.
the audacity to say I could go from nothing, being a survivor who had nothing, took the time to pour into myself. I think it's always important that I say that. I didn't immediately jump into doing the work. So it was years between 1998 and 2006 when God told me to start this organization in Detroit that helps survivors specifically overcome the economic effects of abuse.
Hello, and welcome to Going Beyond the Image, a podcast about how leaders live their brand. I'm your host and founder of Gobi Marketing Group, Loán Lake. In each episode, I sit down with leaders and executives who are walking their talk and who understand that branding is behavior, culture, and service, both inside their organizations and in the community. These are conversations about what it takes to build trust, inspire teams, and create meaningful impact in today's world. And today, we will be speaking with a leader who embodies the G in Gobi, grounded identity. What makes your brand authentic? My guest, Kalyn Fahie, is a faith-driven author, speaker, and visionary who empowers women to walk boldly in their purpose, set intentional goals, and transform their lives through faith, strategy, and personal growth. She is the founder of S.O.F.T Life Coaching, and I'll let her tell you what that S.O.F.T stands for, and the author of Dreams and Visions, a workbook for women who are tired of living small. I first met Kalyn in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, where she now resides, and was drawn by her magnetic personality and her affirmations of herself, her faith, and her belief that people can be their greatest selves. So welcome, Kalyn. Why don't you please tell our guests a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. I have a long history. So from human resource management to being a survivor of domestic violence, and then starting a domestic violence organization to help thousands of survivors in Detroit, Michigan, to moving here to St. Thomas in 2016. And so this year will be my 10th year living here, writing my book that was inspired by God, and then starting my coaching business, S.O.F.T Life Coaching, which stands for Spirit-Led, Organized, Funded, and Transformed. So specifically helping Christian women entrepreneurs to how do you manage working a 9-to-5 and you also want to achieve your goals of operating a business or expanding and growing the business that you currently have. So making it a priority in your life and making money.
Well, thank you for that. And I must share with our listeners that St. Thomas is my hometown. Yes, I was born where people vacation, and Kalyn has moved from cold Detroit to the tropics to make that her daily scenery. So Kalyn, thank you again. Thank you for being my first guest. In a spirit of authenticity, I have to say there were a lot of nerves before I hit the record on this session, but I figure if we're talking about branding and bringing that brand to life in an authentic manner, it's important for people to see that even though I work in public relations and in a public-facing role, I too have nerves because we are all human. And so this is just part of the process. So you've shared your resume, you've shared the S.O.F.T Life Coaching. So let's just start a little bit with, who is Kalyn Fahie? Who are you genuinely, in a couple of words, when people see you, that's a common theme that they describe you with?
I'm a bad mama jamma.
You're a bad mama jamma. I love that. And how does that align with the work that you feel that you're called to do?
It's the audacity of it all. And actually, which is going to be the theme of my next book.
The
And so just
audacity.
the audacity to say I could go from nothing, being a survivor who had nothing, took the time to pour into myself. I think it's always important that I say that. I didn't immediately jump into doing the work. So it was years between 1998 and 2006, when God told me to start this organization in Detroit that helps survivors specifically overcome the economic effects of abuse. So I started this organization. How do we help survivors find jobs and they're being stalked? How do we help them remain safe on their jobs or keep their credit safe, or if they were being stalked by technology, GPS at the time. Now the technology is much more advanced.
Right.
And so doing those things to help protect with their funds and finances and how they move forward. It was at first I had to take care of myself. I had to find my center, connect with God in a very strong way to heal me in all the ways, mentally, emotionally, physically. Um, when I left the abuse, when I left the abusive relationship, it was through the emergency room. He tried to kill me and he shattered my left eye socket. I have a titanium implant that replaces the bone under my eye. So for me to now go out, tell my story, and then actually help work directly with survivors of domestic violence. So to go from doing that, and which actually took me, the Obama administration had acknowledged my work. I was invited to Vice President at the time, Joe Biden's home twice for violence against women receptions. The Obama administration featured me in Essence magazine. So I spoke before Congress. So to get from nothing to that level took a lot of audacity. And then to move from Detroit to St. Thomas, people did not understand. I had come here on vacation, met a man the same day. He married me in a gay ring 2 months later. We got married in a year and a half after that. And I moved here to St. Thomas a year after that. So we got married in August 2015, and I didn't move here until August 2016. We met in 2014. And so people like it was just some fairy tale crazy thing that I would move. And what about the survivors in Detroit? Right. And so I was very clear, there's survivors globally, there's victims globally. And so for me to have the audacity to believe I could still make an impact, I could still do my work, I could do whatever I want to do. I'm empowered. I have all the tools and the things that I need. I had went back to school and had, during the time that I was running my organization, and got a scholarship for survivors of domestic violence to return to school, the Women's Independent Scholarship Program. Mm-hmm. So it's called WISP. If anybody's still interested, they still do this, but they helped me with my undergrad and my grad. So I was like, I have the tools, the resources. I could get a job. I could start a business. I could do whatever I want to do. And that is really an unusual framework for women, because we are usually limited. We feel like we're in a box, but to feel like God got me, I'm going to be okay. I was a single mom, me and my baby, we're going to be okay. My oldest daughter, she had got married and she has 2 beautiful grandchildren. So I'm also, in addition to a bad mama jamma, a grandma.
Well, so one, what you talked about, that's a big belief in yourself, a big move. And so I think Bad Mama Jamma is an appropriate title for you. But also, in my prior work, I used to work in tourism sales for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I would meet a lot of people who went on vacation, either fell in love with the place or a person, and they moved. So your story is not crazy, because there are many people living there now, or who have lived there, that have done that. But to see that in a woman of color, yes, that can be a little rare at times, but I think it speaks more to your level of faith, not just in yourself, but in God, knowing that the person who created you, who made you who you were, who made the things that pour out of you, would help you to figure out what came next. And that's when they talk about, it's following the first step on the staircase. That's what that looks like. And you just took that and put it into action. And I had to smile while you were talking, because I can hear the roosters, which are a very big part of island life in the Virgin Islands. You just never know where they're going to show up. So I think they're echoing that you did the right thing. And yes, the need is great. And I do, from what I've seen, I know that the community has been well served by you. So let's talk a little bit about the SAFE program in Detroit. This wasn't just a program, it was a calling. What is it that happened inside of you that compelled you to build something that didn't yet exist?
Oh, that's a good question. So what happened? What had happened was I had no interest in working with survivors of domestic violence. So sometimes people would say, okay, I must have went through this situation to help other people. I never had that thought. I wanted to just put it behind me and not do anything with it. So that happened in 1998. Now, between 1998 and 2006, I had started working in payroll, and then I moved to HR. And, I started school, and I was writing a woman with a verbal warning about her productivity. She had been a long-term, highly regarded employee, and now everything kind of was tanking. And so I called her in, and she was like, let me tell you about something that happened to me. Let me tell you about something that happened to me. And I said, okay. So she tells me, and then she says, I know this had never happened to you. And I was like, girl, bye. Yes, it did. And so she left, and I sat back in my chair, and I thought, why would she think that this could happen to her and it couldn't happen to me? And so I went home, and I had a pad of paper, and it was like I was in a trance, like the Holy Spirit just took over, and I wrote safe, 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 sisters acquiring financial empowerment. And then I started writing this plan on all these wonderful things we're going to do. I'm like flipping the page, and we're going to have this big event. We're going to do this, and we're going to do these services for survivors. And when I like snapped out of it, I looked at the pad and I'm flipping through the pages. I'm like, this is really an awesome plan. But I had no intention of running a nonprofit organization because I thought nonprofits meant no money. And so I said, maybe when I get rich, like Oprah Winfrey, which was my goal, I would fund this and let somebody else run it, and I wouldn't have to touch it. That was my plan. And I put it to the side. I did not ask God for any more guidance. I did not pray about it. I put it to the side. I ended up, I was a human resource administrator at the time. I'm on my way to work. I'm in a gas station getting some juice. And God said, when you lose your job, you're going to start your own business. And I said, praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Yes. In the gas station, because I always wanted to start my own business. I wanted to be rich like Oprah. I go to work. They lay me off as soon as I walk through the door.
And you didn't know that was happening.
I was the HR person.
I know.
I knew that the company was laying off and we were having challenges, but I thought I was going to be one of the last people because I was also in the middle of buying a house. That's a whole nother testimony.
Yeah,
I ended up getting the house. I was laid off, got the house. It's a crazy story. But anyway, I ended up getting the house, but I'm like thinking I had more time. And it happened that same day. And I'm like, okay, God, you have my full attention. Like, maybe I'm this level of hard-headed that you have to do things so I know that this is you. And so I went into my office and I made some phone calls. I left with 3 customers that day. Now, when I say that, people think I'm talking about survivors. No, because my plan, again, I did not go to God with further clarification, insight, instruction. I do not recommend this plan. So I'm telling you, this is a cautionary tale. I went on my own understanding. Okay, I'm going to do this for-profit organization doing human resource administration for small and medium-sized businesses. Again, be like Oprah, and then fund the nonprofit. That makes sense, right? But our ways are not his ways.
Right.
So I started it. I called 3 vendors of the hospital that I was working for. Like, hey, I don't work here anymore. I could do your HR. They were like, oh, you're really good. We want you. But it was a conflict of interest. There's no conflict anymore. I don't work there. I left with 3 customers and I said, this must be what God wanted me to do.
Right.
I end up closing on my house. Again, that's another story for another podcast episode. And I'm like, okay, I walk in the house and I'm like, okay, Lord, here we go. Here we go. Months later, everything crumbled. Lost the clients. One of them gave me a check that bounced, messed my account up. I'm late on my mortgage. Like, it was shambles. And so I bought the house like around November. This is now March, right before my birthday. My unemployment is ending. And I am on the floor of the living room on my knees. I'm praying. I'm crying. I'm mad as heck. and I'm snot-nosed and I'm praying all at the same time. This is very confusing, but I'm doing all these things at the same time. And I'm pointing my finger up at God. Like I'm pointing to him directly.
Like it's your fault.
You told me
Yes.
to buy this house. And you told me to start my own business. And he said, took the time out of his very, very busy schedule to respond to this crazy woman. And he said, I didn't tell you which business to start. And I said, my bad. I immediately put down the for-profit organization. I don't even speak on the name of it anymore. It's like the thing we don't speak on. I put it down, picked up the nonprofit, called the people together and said, I don't have anything. I've never ran a nonprofit organization. I don't know what I'm doing, but this is what I'm doing. This, and everybody's like, yeah, that sounds great. But they weren't quitting their jobs and they weren't.
Right.
So they like, yeah. And I started the nonprofit just one step at a time. I looked at my hands and I said, I don't have anything. And God said, look at your hands. And I looked at my hands and then I said, okay, what do I have access to? So what I had access to was helping. I initially started helping survivors of domestic violence to find work, all the HR, like how do you fix a resume when you've had choppy jobs because of the domestic violence or gaps in your employment? How do you present as a mock interview when you've been low self-esteem because of emotional and mental abuse? So I would work with them. I would meet at public libraries, would offer space. A local Starbucks had offered me space. And I would meet in these free spaces. I was in my master's degree program at that time, and we could make free copies at the college. I would print out the handouts. I was just so resourceful trying to make it happen. I would print out flyers on paper and just post them up in gas stations and laundromats and places that people would go to. And I'm like, if I'm at this gas station, a survivor might see it, and I'll post it up. And so that's how I got started. And then eventually we grew to other programs and helping survivors to start businesses and balancing their budgets and fixing their credit. Like, all of those type of things that have to do with the economic part.
So what did that season, first of all, thank you. I mean, I'm sure there's someone who may come across this podcast that needs to hear, one, that there is life after domestic violence, and that it doesn't have to define who you become or that you remain. So I wanted to know, what did that season teach you about who you are, Kalyn, at your core?
It taught me, number one, that I'm very resilient and creative, and that I definitely have a good understanding about entrepreneurship, from growing to growing an organization of that size in an area that people weren't familiar with in regards to domestic violence, and still really aren't, in regards to economic abuse. So creating a platform from scratch, I was really one of the first innovators of that work. So creating this platform, creating my own brand as a domestic violence expert, where people would come to me and always ask me to do podcasts like this wonderful one, but also keynote speeches, helping them to develop their training and programming. And so I started to do consulting work, was important. And it also laid the foundation for me to make future pivots where I wasn't scared to pivot into other areas. Like, I did this, I built this before, I could build and do something else. So it reduces the fear of failure, and sometimes people are scared of nonprofits because they're like, oh, the board of directors, they could fire you. The board of directors is an executive director's boss, so they could fire you. But why would I be scared of them firing me if I'm doing a good job? True. I could go to the EEOC, Department of Labor, or something, like they'll have to prove that I'm not doing a good job. As long as you're doing your best, why are you scared? Just like you go to work every day, you're not scared that any day they're just going to fire you and you haven't done anything, you're doing your job. So, right. Delivering excellence, having that confidence that I could always recreate, I could always pivot, and creating that personal brand allowed me to also do that in addition to branding my company and the things that we were doing. And a lot of people don't can't navigate those two things at the same time.
Well, first of all, that seems very freeing to me. Like to remove the fear that the bad could happen, then opens you up to just doing what you know you're supposed to do. So I commend you for that, because a lot of us struggle with that reality. It's like, well, how do I go after what I want when I don't have the safety net and I don't have this and I don't have that? So I have two things as we segment into the next section. You know, faith, vision, and strategy seem to show up everywhere in your work. How did these three things become a, a recurring theme in your brand? Would you say it happened organically, or was that something intentional for you?
It definitely was not intentional. It was not intentional. So the organization SAFE was not a faith-based organization. I was faith-based. I was operating with organization in faith, but we didn't talk about faith-based principles. I kept
Got
it
it.
very universal. And then when I moved here, I started from scratch. I even made the decision to find my own community, and like, I'm going to be living here long term. I want friends. I want a church. And so I intentionally did these things. I went out and I literally was at the beauty salon like, hey, you look like a nice lady. You want to come to my house for lunch? And I would host these lunches.
No, ma'am.
I did. I would host these lunches every month. I would cover everything. And every month I would have a different theme. So the first one was a vision board lunch. And I had been doing vision boards with survivors of domestic violence. That was the first thing that I would do, is we would do vision boards. Now that might sound strange, but this wouldn't be someone like in a crisis, because the first thing in a crisis is handling the crisis. But when they came for like, okay, I want a job or I want to start a business, what are your goals? What dream do you have for yourself? And these conversations would also often be tears. And because they never had the permission or the autonomy to think for themselves or to dream for themselves, or just like dreaming big. So I started doing it then, started doing for advocates, for other community people. And now I came here and we did it with the friends. And then we even did like adult coloring books one month and a spa that I created. We made homemade soft. So I just was like, I want a community. And then I went into doing domestic violence work here. I worked for the State Territorial Coalition for like almost 5 years. Then I ended up transitioning, working remotely for a national domestic violence organization as their training and technical assistance manager for 3 years out of DC. And I worked that job up until this past September 30th because of funding cuts and everything going on. They laid off quite a few staff. And now what happened is, while I was still working that job, so 2024, at the end of the year, my friends got together and they said, let's really hone into our goals in 2025. And I was like, okay, we could do that. Somebody said, we should do vision boards. We should do goal setting. We should do this. So I started putting together all of the materials and the resources. And I'm looking online. I'm like, all stuff for years. I'm pulling back. And God said, that's your first book. And I was like, okay, praise the Lord. And that's the Dreams and Visions workbook. Now, I did at this time. So I've been an entrepreneur. I've been working. I've moved. I've done all these things. But now this is 2025. The end of 2024. And I struggled with making it a faith-based book and leading in my branding as a faith-based person, even though personally and privately, I'm hallelujah all day. And so I knew that if I don't make it faith-based, I know I can get all these domestic violence organizations to buy this book. But if I make it faith-based, they're not going to buy it. And I decided to bet on God. I said, you know what? He told me to do this. Let me just be obedient. I'm going to be honest. I did question. I ain't perfect. So I said, let me be obedient. So I make the book a faith-based book. I'm in a national meeting. They're like, oh, yes, we will give us 15 cases. And then I said, it's faith-based. And they were like crickets. But what has happened is so many people have been blessed by this workbook, and it's taken them through their dreams, their goals. It has short stories of inspiration, prayers, etc. And then because of that and all the responses that I got and people wanting to work directly with me, I launched my coaching business in in the spring. So that
Okay.
was a pivot for me to now be very forward facing. But by the time I launched the coaching business in July, I decided that if I'm going to actually truly coach people to run their businesses successfully, I have to give them the secret sauce. And my faith is my secret sauce on how did I become successful? How could I keep that back from the people that I'm helping to
Right.
coach? I got to tell them, I got to be transparent. I have to tell them everything. And so, fortunately, even before that, I would post a prayer, I would post scriptures. I've been doing that for years. And so for me to make that transition, or like, hey, I'm on my way to church, it wasn't
Right.
as abrupt to my social media following. I was able to
Correct.
make that transition with my personal branding by being transparent all along.
All along. And that's the whole point of this podcast. It's really to show how an organization's leader shows up both in the boardroom and in their private life. And it shouldn't be that varied that you start to question, well, why are they working in that space? So I love that you shared that. And it's a great segue because I want to talk about soft. In a world that tells women, especially Black women in leadership, that we have to be hard, you can't show too much emotion, or that says something about weakness, or that we're too hard, we're too angry, we're too much. You chose softness. So what does that really mean to you, and why did you choose that acronym for the brand that you're building?
This is a good question because actually the whole soft life can be controversial. People
Mhm.
feel like that means lazy, and I don't think so. I think what it means is we don't have to carry the world on our back like Atlas, like we've always been expected to do as women. And so, what does that mean in business? That you can actually have a full life and be successful.
Mhm.
When I started my organization, Save, I was up till 2 o'clock every morning working so hard. I'm going to school, I'm working, I'm getting my master's degree. I have an organization. I was a single mom of two, homeowner, all the things. And I would work till 2 o'clock every morning, then go to sleep for a couple of hours, wake up, take the kids to school at 6:30. Wake up at 6:30 to get them ready for school.
Wow.
And what happened was I feel like that really took a toll on my health. And so in 2006, I was diagnosed with lupus, and that I've been managing very well. And then in 2022, I was diagnosed with breast cancer stage 2. And so I just want other women to really have the capacity to care for themselves. And in 2026, there's so many more ways to do this than it was available in 2006. And so I really talk about my 3 pillars, which are automation, outsourcing, and eliminate. And so outsourcing and automation, we don't give ourselves, as women of color, we don't, as Black women, give ourselves permission for those 2 things, or even the elimination to just say no. We don't give ourselves permission for that. Outsourcing, we will do some, it's culturally acceptable for us to do some things like get your hair done, but
Mhm.
not get a housekeeper.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that housekeeper might be the thing that you need, like that time that you need to take back to invest in your business. A housekeeper might, on average, cost $100, $150. We somehow feel like that's regulated to someone rich, but then also the judgment that we feel like our community might like, oh, you just lazy, you nasty
Either,
house.
you're lazy, or you think you're better than most people. But here's a secret. In some island cultures, for instance, in Jamaica, it's customary to have
Exactly.
a person who will help you with chores around the house because they view that as giving someone else a job who doesn't actually have a means of earning their own income. So it's more community minded than you think.
Yes, I agree. And the same in Africa. So I'm all for it. So whatever that outsourcing looks like, whether it's childcare, is, a housekeeper,
Mhm.
DoorDash. I'm not saying it's been because DoorDash can get expensive, or meal prepping, or, like what do you need? What is the barrier
Right.
for you to help you with that if you have the resources to do so? Because sometimes we'll have the resources to do so. We just don't feel like we deserve that. Like I feel
True.
like, okay, I'll take a little treat every day and spend $7 on a Starbucks. That could be your housekeeper money. I mean, I'm just
Right.
saying.
Or you're eating out at a fancy restaurant you saw online. That whole meal could pay for that cleaning service and give you back what, 3 or 4 hours of your time?
But however, I still feel like you deserve that fancy restaurant. You deserve that Starbucks, but it's just, budgeting and figuring out, okay, what is your priority? What really makes you happy? If the restaurant is what's going to bring you joy, go for it, girl. So, but also then you got to look at your time. So really, now using AI, using automation tools, using things that automatically post for you. I have my email marketing, I have email scheduled to April 24th.
Wow.
Done.
That's
And it didn't
impressive.
take me a whole lot of time to do it. Back in the day, I'm a real proponent of email marketing. So my nonprofit in 2006, I was doing email marketing. That was before nonprofits, small nonprofits on my level weren't doing that. So I really got people attention. My open rates were excellent. Like people were really engaged. But it was literally taking me a week to do one, not a week straight, but I would go back and
Right.
forth and look at it and edit it. And I would send it to other people like, can you look at it? And then they probably wouldn't edit it for me. And then I would send it out and then somebody would respond back. That word was misspelled. Where now, with the help of AI, I don't have these problems. And I'm
Right.
able to deliver a quality product and be consistent, have consistent messaging going
Yes.
out. And so what are things that I need to be more hands-on with? So I choose to be more hands-on with my social media. Now I could get a scheduler to post that, but I go ahead
Right.
and post and respond. But my email, my Pinterest, I have schedulers for that. And really thinking about varying your messaging. So you're not just promoting every single post. So I have a workshop coming up on Thursday. It's the 1 year anniversary of my book and really talking about my book
Wow.
process and lessons learned. And so I've been promoting it heavy. And last night I said a cat jumped up. One of my outdoor cats that I take care of, the cats outside my neighborhood, jumped up on my car. And so I was telling a story on how I operate a sloth trap, neuter, released feral cat colony outside of my house here in St. Thomas with a picture of the cat. It got a lot of engagement. People loved it. But that's where people have parasocial relationships with me. People love me. They know me. They know my love story, my husband, my kids. And I'm not saying it has to be that transparent. Like I'm not telling
Right.
them all my business, but I will post them. My baby's graduation, I posted up pictures, and people feel like they're the internet aunties. They're like cheering them on. So they
But
ask
you know
about my
what?
grandkids. Mm-hmm.
Kaylin, you just hit a good point, and you actually like segued to what I was about to ask you because for me, grounded identity means that your brand is truly rooted in who you are as the leader of that brand. It's not just what you do, it's how you live your life. And so I hope that what people are taking away is that they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Like you don't have to show up one way on camera or in your daily work and then when they see you on the street, you're, antisocial and don't want to talk to people or be bothered, or you're not as pleasant as you seem when they see your outward persona. But many professionals struggle with that. They struggle with aligning their personal values with their professional roles. And it's not just for the leaders. It could be employees. That's why we have things like code switching as a term, because as an island person, when I came to college in the late 80s, it was I was othered, and so rather than being singled out for sounding different, I chose to speak a bit differently than what my natural dialect might be. So, how have you navigated that alignment throughout your own career, throughout your own entrepreneurial journey, where you said, you know what, world, this is me. This is how I'm going to show up every day and you can love me or not. What gave you that light bulb moment?
Back when I was running the nonprofit organization in Detroit, I was I had a very active Facebook page that since got hacked on my birthday a few years ago, maybe like 5 years ago. But that Facebook page was very, very active, and it allowed me to really communicate to people and get support. So we would have these huge events that would bring out 900 people for a domestic violence awareness event. That's unheard of. People would come out. Whole Foods donated 1,000 lunches for us to give to the people. We had 1,000 bags of groceries. We had health screens. We had workshops all around the intersection of domestic violence, health, and finances and economic abuse. And so it was an amazing event, but a lot of that is because I was able to say, hey, Facebook friends, can you repost? Can you share this information? And they were like, we love what you're doing. We see what you're doing, because I had been posting along the way, not just when I needed something. And so I grew those relationships, and people wanted to support me. They wanted to cheer for me. I mean, and again, I don't want people sometimes get real scared. Like, I don't want to tell all my business. You don't have to. I do tend to be a little more transparent than most. So even recently, well, in 2002, when I was going through my breast cancer journey, I was doing TikToks about that. And I did a TikTok around this new treatment that they have where you have these frozen packs, these caps on your head to help preserve your hair. So I talked about the process of that. I made a TikTok about that. I made a TikTok around what I packed in my chemo bag, what are the essentials that I use to help me to feel more comfortable during the process. And I have gotten so many inbox messages from people. I'm sharing this video with my sister. This really helped me. And so being transparent in a way that can support other people. I mean, even now, I also, which I forgot to mention, I recently started a nonprofit here in St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So the same coalition that I worked for 5 years has been closed for the last 3, and I just reopened a new coalition. It's going to be amazing.
That's amazing. Thank you.
So taking people through that journey, people know me as doing these things. I've done this work in the community. I've been transparent about my domestic violence story, around my cancer journey. People really connect with me on a personal level. I'm not saying you have to do that level of transparency, but what it has done is I've a lot of relationships have gone beyond the parasocial to real relationships. And I've formed relationships now with people around the country, around the world. I was asked to speak at a human resource conference in Barbados.
Wow.
That they wanted me to talk to human resource managers as a human resource person around domestic violence and the resources and the support that they could give their staff. And so all of these intersections, all of these transferable skills, things that you do in your past that you think nobody cares about, that people care about it. People cared about my cats outside. People cared about, I used to work for Federal Express back in the 90s as a second job, and I could pack anything. And so me telling maybe a funny story or interesting fun fact about myself, really, people connect with people. People connect with spirits. People connect with each other, people don't just connect with a flyer and saying you're doing
flyer. And it makes you relatable, because then they're learning what's behind the curated image, basically.
And in my motivation and my past and my story, it just connects with people. So that's what I found has worked for me. That's what has connected me with people. That's what legitimizes me. So even when I came to this new place and I'm like, hey, I'm doing this domestic violence work, I am a survivor. Okay.
Right.
Like, you're not just here trying to some scam nonprofit.
Right. You've lived it. It's not like you're coming to save the world because you think you know more. You've actually experienced this for yourself. So with that, then, did you always know who you were, or like, what was the point at which you had to really take a look at yourself and say, this is me, and I'm proud of who that is?
So my mother was always a huge cheerleader, and she passed in 2014, which is actually how I ended up in St. Thomas, because I was so depressed for months, and my friend said, let's go on a vacation, and we ended up here. So but my mom was a huge, huge cheerleader. And because she did encourage me throughout the years, when I read the word and I learned about God's love for me, I was able to accept and receive that. And I think that is a missing element with a lot of people with their faith, is the belief that God or whatever they believe, God supports them and really does want you to win at the end of the day. You just have the whole faith and having the faith to step out and to believe. But in addition to the faith to believe, but me doing a lot of research. Like I get hyper fixated on stuff like on how to build the apps, and I'll just look at YouTube videos and TikToks. I have a PhD in YouTubeology. I will watch a YouTube video and learn something. And I'll just, in the shower, I'll have YouTube videos and podcasts just playing, teaching me different things around business basics, structure, systems, processes, what I should be charging for different services. If it's something I want to know, I'm definitely going to research it. And then what I do is I share that information with others. And so sharing other people's flyers doesn't diminish or dilute your brand. Actually, people have inboxed me and messaged me like, I'm going to share somebody's flyer because I see how you share other people's stuff, and I want to do that too. Supporting other people's events, showing up for other people's events makes a difference. It's a Zoom video. You can show up for that. What are you doing? You could be off camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can wash the dishes while you listening to and you're supporting your friend on the Zoom. So taking that extra step. I currently a executive director of a brand new organization that doesn't have any funds yet, but it's growing. In addition to me running my coaching business and as an author, and I'm writing another book, my second book. Even though I'm doing all of those things, I saw on LinkedIn there was a grant opportunity that I wasn't going for. And I've even posted grant opportunities that I was going for. And I will repost it and share, hey, here's a grant out here. Because what's at the end of the day, what's for me is for me. I'm not operating in fear.
And so what that sounds like to me, and I really admire your honesty in this, and I do feel like, as someone had shared with me, another coach had shared with me, when you show up as yourself, you attract your ideal client. And so you being Kalyn in all of your splendor will draw the people who will make the right fit for your business. And that's something, that I hope leaders will take away, especially those that may struggle with being their authentic selves. Now, no one is saying authenticity means you show up and you're, cursing at work or you're big bad whomever, but it does mean that when someone encounters you outside of the office space or outside of your corporate scenario, there should be some similarity there. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, they didn't seem anything like what I had encountered before. So that's what we're seeing here. And as we're winding down with some of this conversation, I would love to know what has helped to keep your work aligned with who you are. Like, would you say it's because you never stop showing up as yourself, or is there something else that has helped to make that possible?
So consistency is important. Being consistent, showing up consistently. It doesn't take a lot of time once you get into a rhythm. And then the other thing that, I know people are probably tired of hearing about, but niching and segmentation. So then you are talking to that specific person. So for me to say, and I mean, and this is something you can continually refine. Just because you said something initially, you can niche it on down further. So for me to say, I'm only helping survivors in regards to economic abuse, that was unheard of in 2026. Now with my coaching business, I'm talking to actually women of color, Christian entrepreneurs who are in the early phases of their business. That is really like, why would I niche it all the way down to that? That's who I can help. That's who I'm going to be more successful with. I'm talking to a specific person, so I'm putting things out. People are like, that's me. I can relate to that. And that is very important. And just showing up in your full self, people actually, they love it.
Showing up in your full self. And that answers what was going to be my next question, which was, if someone was listening to this today and they're in the middle of redefining themselves professionally or personally, what is that first step to reconnect with their grounded identity?
Their first step is to maybe do a checklist. They could do a bulleted list, real simple, of what are the things that you love. What are the things that you love to talk about when you're with your friends? So again, this isn't your personal business. If you like to do adult coloring books, you like to do a puzzle. I took care of the feral cat colony outside. You like to shop. I've done TikToks about my perfume collection. Like, what do you love? What do you love in the business or in your personal brand, in your career? You can start on the positive. What are things that you love? This is something I love about my career in human resources, that I was able to give people employment. I loved it when I gave the offer letters. When I called people, when I let them know they got the job. That's not a personal, something that you can't share with the world.
Right.
So I would start gently and slowly with things that are more general, but are still important to you. So things that you love to talk about. So a fun fact, a prayer, a scripture, something about your job, your career, your work. Maybe people don't know that you got a certification in something.
Right.
You might have forgot you got a certification. Like, did you know I had a certification in negotiation and mediation? I actually literally forgot about that until I recently started working with the coaching client around that topic. So just putting it out there, you never know what people will connect with and like, oh, okay, I'm going to make that a Facebook post and then someone else will say, oh, I could use that as well.
Right. Well, that is some good advice, and I hope that you all are taking notes. In our closing reflections, when people encounter your work, whether it's through the new nonprofit, it's through your coaching, it's through the workbook, what do you hope that they would experience or feel?
I hope they would feel empowered and that they can do it, that they can do whatever they want to do. If they want to go to the moon and play a rock band, they could do it. I want you to have that level of audacity. And then you might say, okay, well, I don't have anything. I don't have any resources. I don't know what the next step is, that I could also, through my coaching or my book or my nonprofit, help to support you with the next steps. What is the first step? Once you take the first step, the second step will appear. That's just how it works.
Well, we're going to ask you this in just a second because I want people to know how they can get a hold of you. But what does living your brand mean to you today?
Living my brand is freedom. Freedom to shape my existence, my world. I have infinite resources and possibilities, and whatever I put my mind to, whatever I creatively come up with, I can do it and I can implement it. And that's freedom to me.
I love that. So, in other words, bet on yourself. That's what I took away from all of this conversation. So, I'm going to wrap up with 4 rapid fire questions. But first, what is your website or how can people follow you on social media?
Yes, please follow me at kalynfahie.com. That's KALYNFAHIE.com. Sign up for my email list. You'll get a free 30-day action plan. And from there, you'll be in my ecosystem. I'm on all social media platforms except Snapchat. But you can follow me TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the things. I am there. So, and everything is at kalynfahie.com or it'll be at Miss Kalyn, MSKALYN. I've just had that handle since forever.
And we'll have that in the follow-up once this is published and broadcast. So thank you for sharing. So our last 4 questions before you go, Kalyn. This is something that I plan to do with every guest. And again, I thank you for being my very first guest on the Going Beyond the Image podcast. It's a quick segment called Beyond the Image. So there are no wrong answers, just the real ones, okay? What is one value or belief that keeps you grounded, regardless of the title or position you hold?
God's got my back.
God's got your back. And what is one practice that keeps you aligned with the leader you want to be?
Being a servant leader and doing my devotionals every morning keeps me grounded. And my family, sorry that was more answers, but
well, that's okay, but it's real. And what do people often assume about you from the outside that doesn't tell the full story about who you are?
They think that I have all the answers and they don't know I'm learning them as I go.
I think a lot of us could relate to that, but again, you wouldn't know it. And when people experience your leadership, what do you hope that they remember most?
I hope they remember the transformation that we did what we said we were gonna do. Whatever it is, we accomplished our goal. We did it, and they're gonna look back and like, I didn't think we were gonna do it, but we really did do that thing.
Well, I thank you so much, Kalyn. You have helped to even calm my own nerves. I'm inspired by your story. I'm inspired for those that will hear this later on. And remember, branding is not just about being seen. It's not just about the logo that you create. It's building an authentic embodiment of who you are in the office, in the boardroom, and in the community. And so if this episode spoke to you, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a leader who might need to hear these nuggets, and go back and play it again and again. And don't forget to like and subscribe to hear from other leaders that we'll have every other week here on Going Beyond the Image. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, I'm your host, Loán Lake.